Hello and welcome back to coverage of the 2024 Copenhagen Open, a prestigious and exciting Disc Golf Pro Tour Elite Series event. This is Round 2 Front 9 MPO lead card coverage, brought to you by MDG Media. I'm Connor Wood, and with me, Elias Luukkonen.
What's up? Nice to be here once again. Today in round 2 we are dealing with very similar conditions as in round 1. Not that much wind, which is kind of surprising. This was kind of expected to be one of the windier events of the season, but scoring conditions are really good right now.
And they often are. A beautiful weekend in Copenhagen. We see coming in tied for first Paul Ulibarri from the United States, currently leading the world in Circle 1 putting percentage Disc Golf Pro Tour at over 93%.
And Jakub Semerád has been playing an incredible start of the season in the US. I believe his worst position has been around 20th.
Joining them, Daniel Davidsson, familiar character here on MDG Media, fantastic thrower of the disc on both sides, and former champion of this very tournament.
And Lauri Lehtinen had some struggles early on in the season, but he is back in his game. Very accurate thrower, great putter, very consistent. Moving on to hole number 1.
We see here a 175-meter par 4, OB lining the left and right. You have a mando tree at the corner there, after which the fairway bends to the left as you battle these guardian trees and low ceilings up to this green with OB on all sides. At only 175 meters, a lot of players will be looking to start their round with a birdie.
Yeah, for sure. Important to get your drive inbounds. Really anything inbounds is going to be a great chance for the birdie.
With a score of -10 yesterday, 54 throws, Mr. Paul Ulibarri.
Paul playing some of the strongest disc golf of his career right now. I think even he would agree to that. The stats would suggest so. And he's gotten that double-digit under par finish to put him here. Lead card second round to kick off round 2.
And that's a little bit too far right. Looks like he's going to be challenging the right side OB, but skipping off the path. What an incredible start to the round.
Get ready for the next player up on the tee pad. From Tampere in Finland, sponsored by Tampere Frisbee Club, also with a -10 54 round. Let's have it for Daniel Davidsson.
Daniel, a former champion of this event. You know, very interesting what he said in a post-round interview after round 1. He said that he doesn't think that the course is really suiting his game, but he's just playing on the confidence that he has built in the last years, playing so well on this course.
And he's absolutely pumped this drive. Fantastic fighting hyzer, safely bending the corner and pushing left.
The Czech Republic and Žleby, sponsored by Latitude, and also co-leader yesterday with a score of -10. Give it up for Jakub Semerád.
Jakub, a player who loves to craft and shape his angles on the course, throws a lot of overstable plastic, relying on its consistency, and really well experienced this season and last, playing in Europe, playing in the States, really pushing the upper echelon of the sport. And he's pushed that one a little bit too straight, but well in bounds, and will give him a chance.
From Jyväskylä in Finland, sponsored by Latitude 64, with a -9 yesterday, Lauri Lehtinen.
Awesome to see Lauri back on the top of the leaderboard, or at least very near it. Even last week in Belgium, he was a little bit confused with his game, was not quite feeling it on the drives or on the green. This one is nice and wide and right, just needs to slow down before the long OB. And he's right on the edge, skipping back inbounds, perfect drive. He was, in round 1, he was actually able to start off with the Eagle 2 on this hole, with a great throw-in.
Yeah, he was a touch more on the inside hyzer line and had a straight look to it. We see Paul's approach here into the green, erring to the side of caution, comes up a bit short and left. Well done into the circle. We see Jakub now going to be pushing this last guardian tree and finds himself OB long on the approach. He'll be about circle's edge with a par save opportunity though, perhaps a bit longer.
Lauri here. Similar shot to what he threw in though this time, keeping it much lower and shorter, potentially learning from the previous rounds. Can't really call it a mistake when you throw it in, but I'm sure he needs to, or wants to keep it a little bit shorter, as Daniel, from a very unusual position, hit the branches, and this is a big putt to start off the round. Not quite good for him. He's going to start off with a par.
Jakub's par opportunity here from about 11 meters, and just a low from the hand release there. Will be tapping in his bogey. We go to Paul for the birdie.
Really nice start there. It's great that you mentioned the stat of being the best Circle 1X putter in the world. I feel like Paul is someone that has really good speed control on the putt, not putting very hard usually. Same thing for Lauri, but a little bit low there. He's also not a player that putts with the same speed that we see from some of the younger, less experienced players in the field.
Certainly, I think especially over time, those small margins of error, things like modulating the power of those shorter distance putts to make sure if you do miss that you keep it close. I think over time they add up, and we're seeing Paul really master that modulated putt, just dropping in every time. Elias, speak to us here about this hole.
Hole number 2. It's a short par 4, just above 140 meters. Important to hit this gap off the tee. The most common play is to throw either a forehand or just a straight back and get as far forward towards this path that we're flying over right now. This is kind of the ideal sweet spot for your drive, from where you have quite a short approach with a lot of options. You can go above the small trees, you can go under the branches with a low forehand. Even some overhands or grenade shots are to be seen on this hole.
And Paul pushes the high ceiling of the initial gap. Was redirected, I think, unfavorably. And Daniel inversely to the right side, I think just sat right down near the edge there.
Lauri going for the sidearm, potentially trying to keep it low, and that's exactly what he's trying to do. Even a little bit too low there. He's going to be contending with those bushes, although from where he is, it's a great spot for a spike hyzer. And talking about a hyzer, there's this tight hyzer window off the tee that if you hit, you're always in the perfect position on that left side.
And I honestly love to see that. If he can hit that gap consistently, it is a very reliable throw to provide the birdie look. The other players going down the straight gap have more variables which they need to get right on the throw. So that simplified one-angle shot from Jakub, very interesting, as we see even what Paul is left with here. Really demanding, awkward shot from the bushes center. And he just filters out the back of the rough. That'll give him a long putt to the basket.
Let's see Jakub here. He's looking low. Tough approach there going low, but that's a great shot. Even avoiding the long OB that is only about 6 meters behind the basket. And look at this. Lauri has the disc upside down. This is personally my favorite way to approach on this hole, and looks like Lauri is really enjoying it as well. On the edge of the bullseye. That's a grenade shot, very accurate. Goes directly up and down if you throw it high enough with an overstable disc.
I think this is one of the few holes that plays best for an overhand approach from multiple angles. Paul with a soft little bit at it, really online the whole way, but quite reserved. We see Daniel, this long look.
Not a bad run, but that's gonna be a par that's gonna sting a little bit. It's a hole that you would really like to birdie, just like hole number 1. Both holes 1 and 2 are playing with a birdie rate of about 40%. So that's incredibly high for Elite Series event. And these guys are on the lead card. They're expecting even more birdies than the average player in the field.
And hole 2, I think, really exemplifying a lot of the themes here at Valby Park Disc Golf Course. Technical placement shots, you gotta hit your gaps, make your putts. We see here hole number 3, a 267 meter par 5 as the drone flies. A lot of players on their tee shot will try to penetrate the trees on the right, shorten the distance a little bit, and after which they'll find themselves in this long and generously wide fairway. You really just want to pump your second drive up there as far as possible and then try to approach the green, behind, over, or around these last guardian trees. That high grass underneath them, a common landing zone for players who are left with a circle to putt. Very rare you see this one parked, although not too much danger either.
Yeah, the distance being the main danger for sure, and that's what makes this the most difficult hole on the course. One of only 4 holes that are averaging above par for the field. Lauri here going for the huge Anheuser shot. Needs to avoid the cut roll OB, and he has stayed inbounds. That's going to be a good angle to approach the green from, especially with the forehand, but quite some distance left still.
And we see the wind has picked up a little bit here in the second round, common for Copenhagen. And Jakub has sent that flex out to the right side fairway, might even be playing a backhand hyzer on his second shot over the OB. We see Paul similarly turning the backhand over through the gap and simply playing with the width available to them.
And let's see Daniel also aiming for that inside gap with a hard thrown backhand, though he has hit one of the last trees on the edge of that rough patch. Now from here it's all about hitting it hard, but he has hit it hard into the first tree. Made about 1.5 meters of progress. What happened there?
I'm sure he didn't intend it, but I think that walk-up was not oriented left or right of the tree that he hit. I think perhaps a little bit of indecision in his orientation, but he's looking to cover as much distance now as possible to try and scramble what's left of the hole. And we go to Lauri now, out on the left side. Will open up the angle if he wants to try and go huge, but I think a good stable disc here on a soft Anheuser. Try to crash these late trees.
Looks like a nice straight to stable fairway driver there, and he's gonna be in circle 2. You have to get past all of those trees if you want to get to circle 1. But circle 2 there should be no problem. When he's on, he's one of the better putters in Finland. Can just make the putts looking so easy even from 15 meters out.
There's the throw from Jakub that I mentioned, playing over the right side road. And he does not remain in the green. I do believe he crossed quite far up there, so should be rewarded with some progress, but we'll see what he's left with. Paul as well, playing to the right side of those big guardian trees, with a lot of distance left for him on this shot.
And I believe he will be within putting distance there. Daniel with a good up. No problem with that. He's gonna be a little bit disappointed with how the hole went after that short tree hit.
Lauri's putter getting a bit beat up by the wind there. We go to Paul, having this just outside the circle look, and jumps it in, heart of the chains. 2 under through the first 3 holes.
Yeah, that's very impressive. Paul being the strongest C1X putter, of course, in the world right now, but Circle 2, I feel like he's very accurate from the short side of Circle 2, like he was right there. Maybe from 18 meters out I might pick another player.
Oh, and a slippery putt for Jakub there, all over the chains, but sneaks its way out the strong side. I think a bit underwhelming for him, but you see he was given that distance up there at the green to where he crossed. And a solid putt there from Daniel. Able to do what he can after that initial blunder at the tree's edge. Lauri for the comebacker.
Good work there. And yeah, good putt from Daniel. He's also a player that's almost always very good at driving, and really putting has been kind of the determining factor in his career.
From top competition to the new players. From supporting women to funding new courses. PDGA Europe is much more than competition. Visit pdga.com/join and grow the sport.
Moving on to a longer par 3. Hole 4 is just above 130 meters. The shot is pretty simple. You have a large gap off the tee. This gap is not too often missed by a lot of the top competitors. Of course, occasionally you see somebody going a little bit early left with the shape being slightly right to left. Really, the shot here is either a very hard thrown fairway driver with some good stability at the end, or a hard thrown distance driver also with a good flat to finish flight.
We see Paul up first, coming in just a bit early left as you mentioned, but not by much. In actually a very solid position, and I think you hit it on the head, Elias, that a lot of the top players can get themselves to Circle 1, Circle 2 for a look on this hole, but that elevated basket demands a good commitment and focus on the green as well. I think that's the differentiator here on this hole. Lauri, unfortunately, wide right hits the trees, but I think left with an open, unobstructed look.
Yeah, a little bit surprising to see anybody on the card to miss this gap, as Jakub has barely made it with a nice flex shot. That's kind of what you would expect from him. You know, really liking those overstable discs on slight anhyzer angles. Let's see if Daniel can push it with a nice slight hyzer release as he usually does.
And Daniel, coming into this season with an open bag, is able to throw any plastic that he would like. And you see him sneak his way just outside Circle 1, probably 13 or 14 meters remaining for him to the chains. We go to Lauri, shaping this anhyzer forehand. Floaty with a ton of spin. And nicely done. And giving him a tailwind putt, whether intentional or not, I can appreciate that on the elevated basket.
Yeah, that's a nice approach, and as Daniel misses a little bit low, Lauri was actually approaching or practicing the approaches relentlessly in the off-season. He had multiple hundreds of approaches per day on some of his practice days. So that really paying off. Let's see if Paul can hit a good putt here in the wind.
You see for him that right to left, slightly diagonal wind caught the flight plate and just lifted him. Lauri Lehtinen, good par save though, is able to connect once making it to the green. And Paul, certainly not a freebie here to save his par.
That's a good one though, as the wind is slightly picking up. It was interesting wind, you know, throughout the day, because some moments it was blowing a little bit more, and then some moments the wind was just perfectly calm.
Gusty Copenhagen, certainly some conditions the locals are familiar with, but for our visitors I'm sure they will certainly find out. We continue here to hole 5, a 106 meter par 3 players will want to throw a straight shot that towards the end of the flight finishes quite strongly to the right. If you have it, the forehand hyzer plays nicely, the backhand roller or long anhyzer turnover as well. You see that anything early right will be into the very thick tree line. You want to try and battle this late low ceiling and guardian trees. Very common for a good shot to end at around circle 1's edge or circle 2. Very difficult to park.
Yeah, 67% of the field landing in circle 2 on this hole, or inside of circle 2, as Paul is throwing a very quick flip roller, going with an extremely understable disc. That is what you need for the roller, although even the roller, if it's thrown good, a lot of the times it's above 10 meters away.
Lauri strong on the forehand. That was coming in with a lot of speed. I think if given the full flight would have been well up there with the basket, but you see him contend with that ceiling and get knocked down as well in that circle 2 range. Jakub also going to be shaping the backhand here, rolling it around the corner, and he too connects with that same tree, but another good shot.
Yeah, perfect weight on that roller. It looks like without the tree hit, it could have even made it to circle 1. And maybe third time's a charm. Let's see, Daniel, another very quick flipping roller. That is a great line. He's going to be right there on the edge of circle 1, maybe even a little bit inside.
And that was a great example of how late you want the rightwards movement. He outdrove the hole and then curled back towards it for the best drive of the bunch. Lauri there looking at his hand as if a slight misrelease. I know just last week he had his throwing finger split open, the skin bothering him a little bit. Mentioned that it should heal now by Copenhagen. And Paul just a bit low on his attempt as well. Some frustration out of him there, I think. Slight lack of commitment.
And Jakub here outside the circle. Very brave run, although did he find the OB long there? I couldn't quite see, but the disc bounced dangerously towards that OB on the long side.
And you touched earlier on Daniel's driving prowess. He too, closest of the bunch, unable to translate. And yes, that is Jakub in now on the chains. Daniel with a tough spit out. Low and center. But does not stick.
Yeah, so unfortunate from Daniel. That looked to be a perfectly good putt. Of course, kind of near the cage, bouncing off of it, but anytime you see the disc bouncing out from the pole, you know that there is something seriously wrong with the luck on the shot. And moving on to hole number 6. I feel like it's kind of the last of the tough birdies that we have. You know, a few tougher birdie holes in a row. After this hole it gets much easier on the birdies. You have this straight route that the drone is flying. You can throw a hard thrown mid-range or a nice flip-up fairway driver through there. Or a lot of players are also going for either a wide backhand anhyzer or a wide forehand hyzer. That is probably the safest shot on this hole, but if you want to park it, you almost have to go straight.
And one of the most well-guarded greens on the course. Similar to the last hole, even good shots will often just get to circle 1's edge. Really difficult to have that late piercing of the gap. Paul Ulibarri, though, sneaks his way up there, I believe just into the circle, about 7 or 8. Fantastic stuff.
Really good kick at the end of the flight. Was fading towards the left side, but nice kick. Now he's going to be well in the circle. And Lauri also hitting the gap very well, but kind of overturning it with that fairway driver, and he's going to be well short. Have to contend with the low ceiling, which makes the C2 putt much tougher.
Jakub pushing the width a little bit, getting it turned over. Also just a little bit low, connects with that grass prior to the green. We will see Daniel here look to shape the forehand wide and hopefully high. I think a little bit lower than he's intending there, but should make good progress.
You know, I think Daniel might even be playing just for the luck factor, trying to hyzer into the woods and hopefully take a good bounce to get through.
Good bounce there on the ground play. Lauri shaping the Anheuser putt underneath those branches. Gives it a soft bid. And we see Daniel with that birdie putt, as you mentioned, just crashing the left side of the green.
Nice enthusiastic effort, but he's going to be left with a short par putt from about 6 meters. Let's see if Paul can get a stroke on the card with a good hit here, and of course he can. That's really where he's going to separate himself from the field. Those inside the circle looks.
There's that 93% kicking in. Daniel as well, good on the par save, particularly after the previous green. Had the birdie look, gave it a bid, made the comebacker. I think all things considered, he'll be all right with that. As we see these short tap-ins remaining. Elias, talk to me about the difficulty of hole 6.
Yeah, hole 6 is one of the 4 holes on the course that are playing above par.
And here we see hole 7, a 93-meter par 3 island hole. Players will be throwing over this small depression in the ground. As it rises back to the inbounds area, you will find OB no more than 5 or so meters behind the basket, but the island itself is quite generous on all sides, so a lot of players will err to the side of caution, try to throw into the circle just short of the basket, and make their putt. If you fail to make the island, there is a drop zone to try and save par.
It looks like we have a chase card check-in. A great shot. A little bit short, actually. I'll take that back. It's not great, it's good. That was Jesse Nieminen going with his signature forehand. An important putt here. If you airball this, you're going to the OB. But he puts it in the middle. A player that has been practicing putting in the off-season more than usual.
And a good drive is enough for him there to capitalize. We go to Paul, also playing the forehand, has an Anheuser release with an overstable disc, and as he flexes it back to the pin, rolls it through the bullseye. Really fantastic management of that slight crosswind there, using the overstability.
And Lauri trying to follow suit with a very similar angle, a little bit higher there. And that's just beautiful weight on the shot. Just 5 meters short, that's really where you want to play it, never risking the long OB. And take a look at this crowd.
Some fantastic enthusiasm for disc golf here in Copenhagen. We see Jakub playing a similar flex line, although with the backhand he hangs it out to the right, does not finish too strongly left, but I think does find himself in the circle. Daniel here as well, opting for the forehand, and you see all 3 of them getting that slight Anheuser release. The stability really good to control that distance straight that they want to avoid. Well done, all 4 players looking at a birdie putt.
We're going back to States next week. Yeah, Monday.
Yeah, I find it interesting that we have 3 players on the card with very similar preferred sidearm throws, as Jakub makes a great putt. You know, all Paul, Lauri and Daniel like that, you know, slight Anheuser release on the sidearm for the control.
Yeah, forehand players particularly enjoying that overstable plastic, those high torque releases that allows them to have a reliable and consistent flight. We see some good putts here to take their birdies.
And for the first star frame of the round, well done by the card. It's a hole that you really would like to birdie, as I mentioned. The easier birdie hole starting now, this one being birdied 53% of the time, and hole 8, this one also 48% of the time, so half the field getting a birdie on this one. It's all about just keeping your mental game in check. The shot is very easy, 68 meters, perfectly straight, but the gap is tight, and if you're off, you're gonna miss it.
Yeah, a really fantastic hole. Allows players to choose their stability, pick their favorite disc, backhand or forehand, and just throw something that you can be confident about. We see another chase card check-in with Jesse Nieminen, known well for his forehand angle control, and finds himself a little bit overturned there, but gets a forwards kick off the trees, and you can see well positioned to continue finding the birdies.
And it's great that we see Jesse during this round as he makes a good birdie putt. He's well in pace to shoot a double digits round.
You mentioned the Anheuser forehand shot earlier, Elias, and we see exactly that from Paul, but he knew it. Out of the hand, a late release kicks him off to the right. We will see Lauri try to craft a slight adjustment to that line.
A little bit flatter there, but fading out. I'm not really sure. I don't really like the overstable disc on this hole. The fairway is just so perfectly straight, and with this distance you can't really power up on that overstable disc to make it to go perfectly straight. For example, Jakub there, even though he missed the fairway, he had a great shape on it, a shape that doesn't take as much room as the overstable flex.
Personally, I totally agree with you. The overstability requires more width for the full flight compared to something released on hyzer that goes to flat and stays there. Really requires a lot less width on the whole line itself. I think reduces the chance a little bit, but I'm sure these guys have been hitting these shots with their discs in practice rounds. Here in round 2, it's really just about executing the game plan that they came in with. I think a lot of players not wanting to doubt themselves in the moment that they're throwing off the tee and maybe change something up that they're not too comfortable with. As we see now, just some good jump putts to try and progress to the green.
I think Paul might have a little bit of work left there. Let's see how Lauri does from here. Having to go with the sidearm. Looks a little bit hard thrown, and yes, he's gonna be on the long side of the basket, but should be no problem there. Open putt from no more than 7.5. And let's see Daniel here outside the circle. Look, great chance for him to pick up that putting stroke, but pulled it a little bit to the right.
We see Paul here has 2 birdies in a row. This would make 3, and he is good for it. A par, rather, after that initial kick, but a fantastic putt regardless. Currently sitting at 14 under, 3 strokes over anyone else here with him on this lead card at the moment.
Yeah, I'm sure these players know that they're not playing the hottest right now, as talking about not playing the hottest, Lauri is gonna have a birdie on the shortest hole of the course. But yeah, these guys know that if they're not taking birdies, the chase card or the third card or the fourth card is gonna overtake them. This tournament is extremely tight, one of the tightest tournaments I have ever seen in my lifetime.
And I think some of the small adjustments made to the course make it really attackable and allows players to shoot these hot double-digit rounds and really set the pace if they want to find a win. They can try it here on hole 9, a 156-meter par 4, this initial mando tree, encouraging players to throw down this winding tunnel, bending softly to the right the entire way. A lot of players will look to shape a long Anheuser flight on the backhand or a forehand hyzer with some skip, maybe even a roller, as they then try to break out from the tree line and enter this basin green where they find the basket perched at the back. A really encouraging green to give it a go. We get another check-in with Jesse.
Really good forehand hole for Jesse. He's accurate and relatively powerful with that hyzer sidearm. Perfectly through the gap. And wants to take that skip to the right. He's going to be in the middle of the fairway and only about 50 meters left. That was an ideal shot off the tee.
Going forehand. Jesse has done beautifully there. Up into the bullseye. And just lighting it up at the moment. Jesse setting a really strong pace here from the chase card. And you mentioned it earlier, some of these guys not playing their hottest rounds so far. If they're to check the scores, they would see the pressure We have Paul getting us started here off the tee and pushes it a touch straight, but will kick out into an open and long look to the green.
Yeah, still manageable from there, although he's so far away from all of the small gaps on the second shot that it's going to be tricky. Jakub with the aggressive roller. This is an aggressive play, but it usually works out pretty well. As you see there, he even hit some trees, but still on the fairway, and a good chance for the birdie.
Daniel as well hitting a very similar line, although does not catch the early tree. That thing was running. And we see him curl up also way up there. Will leave him only 40 or 50 meters max to the green. Lauri also shaping the forehand hyzer. You want something really overstable that will continue to push right, catch that big skip. And an unfortunate roll back behind that tree, but I think surely enough distance to be a manageable upshot.
Yeah, for sure. If you get that far down there, it really doesn't matter if you're in the middle or on the right or left side of the fairway. From here, it does kind of matter. Paul really having to shape a shot through the left side gap. And he has done a pretty good job of it, but not quite a perfect job. He's not going to be within putting distance there. Let's see if Jakub can do better going for the right side gap, which is, I think, the biggest gap on the hole.
Yeah, and that green sloping behind the basket really allows players to crash the floor there with some speed. You don't need to have as much touch as, for example, the previous green's approach. And we see Lauri as well taking that big right side gap. He's not too pleased with the early fade there, but well within the circle for birdie.
Yeah, that should be no problem for him. Let's see if we can see some highlights here. I know Paul has a great position to run it from. Before, of course, Daniel with his insane drive. A little bit early on the sidearm as well. But he's right next to Lauri. No more than 6 to 7 meters left.
We see Paul not yet into putting range. Going to be shaping this chip hyzer into the bullseye. Tap in par. All things considered, not too bad after hitting a tree on the first. We go to Daniel now. An amazing drive. The upshot leaving him with that and able to translate into the birdie. Well done. Sitting at even for his front nine.
And Lauri, same putt. He just saw it made. Do the same a little bit on the right side. You could see it out of the release. He was not sure whether it was going in or not. But good catch from the basket. And 2 under through the front is not great. He's definitely looking for something better, but on the back, you know, you can catch 6, 7, even 8 birdies if you're playing really hot.
I think the front nine, certainly the one to conquer if you want to win the tournament. The back feeling more attackable overall for the field, I believe, in terms of difficulty. But as we take a look at the standings, we see some really hot scores from the field pushing our lead card here. Halfway through the tournament now, we see Paul Ulibarri with a 4 under front nine at 14 under total. Lauri at 2 under, Jakub and Daniel both at even. Man, it's heating up, Elias.
Yeah, it's getting so tight, and you can just see how many players are within a couple of strokes. They will have to play hot if they want to win this tournament, or even have a chance to be in top 5. Hope to see all of you guys on the back nine, where me and Connor are covering the rest of this round 2. Thank you for watching and see you on the back.